Today we're talking about 30 motorcycle innovations that promised to change the game, but totally flopped. So hit that like, smash subscribe, and let's jump right into 30 bike innovations that did not stand the test of time. Number 30, hub center steering, the future that never was. For decades, engineers have dreamed of replacing the good old front fork with something better. Enter hub center steering, a radical design that separates braking and steering forces by mounting the front wheel on a swing arm with a complex linkage. On paper, it looked like genius. Unlike telescopic forks, which dive under hard braking, hub center steering promised stability and precision. The theory was, no fork flex, no dive, more confidence in corners. Brands like Bimota with the Tessie 1D, Yamaha with the GTS 1000, and boutique builders like Vectrix swore this was the future. But reality hit harder than a pothole at 100 miles per hour. Riders complained the steering felt numb, like turning a shopping cart with a busted wheel. The mechanical complexity, extra bearings, linkages, arms, added weight, and made servicing a nightmare. Most mechanics hated working on them. Take Yamaha's GTS 1000. Launched in the 90s with futuristic tech, ABS, fuel injection, and hub center steering. Sounds amazing, right? Yet sales bombed. Riders didn't feel connected to the road, and all that innovation came with a premium price tag. Bimota and Vectrix still keep the concept alive today, but mostly as exotic engineering showpieces. The bikes look like something Batman would ride, but they never went mainstream. Why? Because while hub center steering solved problems that existed mostly on paper, the trusty telescopic fork kept getting better, lighter, and stiffer, without alienating riders. Today, hub center bikes are more likely to be found in museums or collector garages than carving up mountain roads. It wasn't a total failure, but more of a solution searching desperately for a problem. Number 29, motorcycle airbags, the Goldwing Cannon. In 2006, Honda shook up the touring world by announcing the first ever motorcycle airbag system on its flagship Goldwing. The concept was simple. If airbags save lives in cars, why not bring the same protection to bikes? Honda's engineers spent 15 years developing it, running over 200 crash tests and building computer models of collisions. The system worked by mounting a crash sensor on the front fork that deployed a bag from the fuel tank area during a frontal impact. In theory, it would stop the rider from slamming into the handlebars or flying over the bike. But here's the reality check. Riders quickly pointed out that motorcycle crashes aren't as predictable as car crashes. You're not strapped in, so instead of cushioning you, the bag sometimes acted like a cannon, launching you upward or sideways. It also only worked in very specific conditions, primarily frontal impacts at certain speeds. Anything at an angle, low sides, or rear-end hits, useless. Then there's the cost. The Goldwing was already a premium machine, and the airbag option added thousands of dollars and extra weight to a touring bike that already tipped the scales. Many riders felt it was a solution in search of a problem, especially since protective gear like airbag vests and jackets offered more versatility across different crash scenarios. Even today, Honda remains the only major brand to seriously try a built-in motorcycle airbag. While it proved Honda's commitment to safety, the system never caught on industry-wide. Riders kept joking, "Airbags in cars save you. Airbags on bikes just help you fly faster." A bold innovation, yes, but one that simply didn't survive the road test of reality. Number 28. Oval Pistons, Honda's expensive science project. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Honda was desperate to win in motorcycle racing after the dominance of two-strokes. Their solution? Push the boundaries of four-stroke technology so far that engineers had to literally reinvent the shape of pistons. Enter the legendary Honda NR New Racing Project. Instead of round pistons, Honda used oval pistons, which were basically stretched out circles, allowing engineers to fit 8 valves per cylinder and 2 connecting rods per piston. This gave the engine the ability to breathe like a multi-cylinder monster while technically staying within displacement limits. On paper, it sounded like an engineering masterstroke. The NR 500 GP racer debuted in 1979 with this wild setup. In reality, it was a disaster. The bike was heavy, complex, overheated, and couldn't keep up with simpler, lighter 2-strokes. Honda poured millions into the project, but it never won a single race. Undeterred, Honda doubled down and built the NR 750 for the road in the early 90s. With its exotic oval piston V4, single-sided swing arm, under-seat exhausts, and carbon fiber bodywork, it looked like it had ridden straight out of the future. It made around 125 horsepower, but by the time it hit showrooms, bikes like the Fireblade offered more performance for far less money. The NR 750 cost around $60,000 in 1992, well over $120,000 today, adjusted for inflation. Only about 300 were built, making it more of a collectible art piece than a serious sport bike. Today, the NR 750 is a museum star and auction darling, often selling for 6 figures. But as an innovation, it was an expensive reminder that sometimes the most brilliant ideas just don't make sense in the real world. Number 27, feet-forward motorcycles, reclining into oblivion. Imagine riding a motorcycle while sitting in a lazy boy recliner. That was the vision behind feet-forward motorcycles. Machines that place the rider in a low, stretched-out position with their legs extended like they were in a car. The most famous attempt was the Quasar, designed in the 1970s by Malcolm Newell and Ken Lehman in the UK. The idea was to create a motorcycle that combined the efficiency and fun of 2 wheels with the comfort and weather protection of a car. Riders sat low behind a roof and windshield with their feet stretched out in front of them. It was aerodynamic, surprisingly fuel efficient, and even capable of over 100 miles per hour with its Reliant car engine. Sounds like a win, right? Well, not exactly. Riders found the position awkward, especially in city traffic. Visibility was terrible. You were so low to the ground that SUVs and trucks towered over you. Putting your feet down at stops was clumsy, and maneuvering in tight spaces was a nightmare. Other feet-forward designs came later, like the Voyager and even concept bikes from Honda and BMW, but they all ran into the same problem. Motorcycling isn't just about comfort. It's about control and connection. With your legs out in front, you lose the ability to grip the tank or shift your weight effectively in corners. It just didn't feel like motorcycling anymore. Today, only a handful of Quasars survive, often popping up at classic shows as curiosities. They're fascinating pieces of engineering history, but also proof that not every idea, no matter how innovative, fits the spirit of riding. Feet-forward motorcycles tried to merge 2 worlds, but in the end, they satisfied neither. Number 26, enclosed motorcycles, the sardine can ride. Motorcycle designers have always flirted with the idea of creating the perfect commuter bike, something fast, fuel-efficient, and as protective as a car. Enter the enclosed motorcycle, a machine that wrapped riders in a cocoon of fiberglass or carbon with doors, windshields, and sometimes even seatbelts. The most famous of these was the Perovs Monotracer from Switzerland. Picture a motorcycle that looks like a fighter jet without wings. It had a fully enclosed body, retractable outrigger wheels for balance at low speed, and could hit 150 miles per hour while delivering incredible fuel economy. On paper, it seemed like the holy grail of commuting, the thrill of a bike with the safety and aerodynamics of a car. But reality, riders hated it. For one, they felt trapped. On a normal motorcycle, you can bail out or lean naturally in emergencies. In an enclosed bike, you're basically locked inside a sardine can. Parking was awkward too. You had to deploy little training wheels at stoplights just to avoid toppling over. And in hot weather, riders described it as riding inside a greenhouse. Other attempts like the Lit Motors C1 gyro-stabilized concept and the BMW C1 scooter also failed to find an audience. The BMW C1 even came with a seatbelt and roof, but riders still felt silly, and most motorcycle markets didn't want to wear seatbelts on a bike. While these machines won engineering awards and looked futuristic, they never caught on. Enclosed motorcycles solved problems most bikers weren't asking to solve. In the end, motorcycling is about freedom, openness, and connection to the road, not being sealed up like canned tuna. A fascinating idea, yes. A practical one? Not even close. Number 25. Turbine-powered motorcycles, jet dreams, gas station nightmares. Few things sound cooler than saying, my bike has a jet engine, and in the early 2000s, that's exactly what the MTTY 2K promised. A motorcycle powered by a Rolls-Royce Allison gas turbine engine, the kind usually found in helicopters. It produced around 320 horsepower and could hit a top speed of 250 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest production bikes of its time. Jay Leno famously owned one, and it became a legend overnight. But here's the problem. Turbine engines are fantastic in aircraft, not so much in motorcycles. For starters, the exhaust could literally melt car bumpers if you stopped too close at a traffic light. Refueling wasn't exactly convenient either. You couldn't just pull into your local gas station unless it happened to sell jet fuel or kerosene. And then there was the practicality factor. Turbine engines take time to spool up, meaning throttle response was sluggish until, bam, you got hit with an insane rush of power. Riders joked it was like flipping on an afterburner, not ideal for casual Sunday rides or commuting to work. Crichton and other boutique builders also played with turbine-powered concepts, but none made it beyond ultra-limited runs. They were too expensive, too impractical, and way too niche. Today, turbine bikes are collector's items and YouTube stars rather than real-world machines. They grab attention at shows and auctions, but nobody is commuting on them. They represent the wild side of motorcycle innovation, a dream that was thrilling to imagine but impossible to sustain. Cool? Absolutely. Practical? Not unless your daily commute involves a runway. Number 24. Shaft drive sport bikes, heavy metal misstep. When you think of shaft drive, you probably think of touring rigs like the Honda Goldwing or adventure beasts like the BMW GS, bikes that value durability and low maintenance over razor-sharp handling. But in the 1990s, Yamaha decided to flip the script with the GTS 1000, a sport touring machine that combined futuristic hub-center steering with a shaft drive. On paper, it was ambitious. Shaft drives have some clear advantages: no greasy chains to clean, less frequent maintenance, and longevity that can outlast the bike itself. For touring riders, that's perfect. But sport bike riders, they want lightness, responsiveness, and maximum power transfer to the rear wheel. And that's where things fell apart. The GTS 1000, despite its advanced tech, tipped the scales at a hefty over 550 pounds. Riders complained it felt sluggish compared to chain-driven competitors. The shaft also introduced what's called shaft effect, a lifting and squatting sensation under acceleration and deceleration that made cornering feel weird and unpredictable. Add in high production costs, and Yamaha's future of sport bikes became a sales disaster. Other manufacturers have dabbled in sporty shaft-driven machines too, but none made a serious dent in the performance segment. Chain drives simply offered better performance-to-weight ratios, while modern O-ring chains made maintenance easier than ever. Today, shaft drives are still alive and well, but strictly in the worlds where they belong: long-haul touring, luxury cruisers, and adventure bikes. On sport bikes, they're a reminder that sometimes the old ways, like a simple, lightweight chain, just can't be beat. Number 23, disc valves, racing's forgotten trick. Back in the golden age of two-stroke racing, manufacturers were desperate to squeeze every last drop of power out of relatively small engines. That's when the rotary disc valve came into play, a clever idea where a thin spinning disc at the crankshaft controlled the timing of fuel and air entering the engine. Suzuki and Kawasaki were among the biggest adopters, using disc valves in their Grand Prix race bikes of the 1960s and 70s. The benefits were clear: more precise intake timing, higher RPM potential, and a significant boost in horsepower compared to piston port designs. The Suzuki RG500, for example, used a square-4 disc valve setup that dominated the 500cc GP scene, even carrying Barry Sheene to World Championship. So what went wrong? Maintenance and complexity mostly. Disc valves required ultra-precise tolerances and wore out quickly, especially in endurance racing. Riders and mechanics complained that a single worn plate could rob the bike of performance. On top of that, the bulky design limited fuel tank size and made packaging awkward. As technology evolved, reed valves rose to the top. They were cheaper, simpler, more compact, and offered nearly the same benefits with far fewer headaches. By the 1980s, most manufacturers had abandoned disc valves altogether in favor of reed valve induction, which went on to dominate both road bikes and motocross machines. Today, disc valve two-strokes are prized by collectors and vintage racers. They're remembered as part of an era when innovation meant trying wild new ideas even if they didn't survive the long haul. In the end, disc valves were a brilliant stepping stone, but not the future. Number 22, diesel motorcycles, the slowest idea ever. At some point, somebody thought, diesel engines last forever, sip fuel, and make tons of torque. Why not stick one in a motorcycle? Sounds logical, right? Well, the results proved otherwise. The most infamous attempt came from Royal Enfield, which offered the Taurus diesel in India during the 1990s. On paper, it seemed perfect for budget-conscious riders. Nearly 200 miles per gallon fuel economy, simple mechanics, and the legendary Enfield frame. But reality hit hard. The Taurus topped out at a painfully slow 40 miles per hour, sounded like a farm tractor, and vibrated so badly that mirrors and teeth rattled in unison. Riders nicknamed it the agricultural bike, and not in a good way. The military also explored diesel motorcycles, especially for NATO forces, since diesel fuel is more universally available in combat zones. The most famous was the Hayes DT M1030M1, a modified Kawasaki KLR 650 converted to run on military-spec diesel or jet fuel. It promised efficiency and range, but performance was, well, let's just say soldiers could probably run faster in some cases. Acceleration was sluggish, and maintenance was tricky compared to regular petrol bikes. The fundamental problem: diesel engines are heavy, low revving, and clunky, the complete opposite of what makes motorcycles fun. Motorcycles thrive on high revving engines, responsive throttle, and lightweight design. Diesel bikes were reliable workhorses but stripped all the joy out of riding. Today, diesel motorcycles are more of a curiosity than a viable option. The Royal Enfield Taurus has a cult following among collectors for its sheer oddity, and military diesel bikes occasionally appear at auctions. But as a mainstream innovation, diesel bikes proved that not every fuel-efficient idea belongs on two wheels. Number 21, Hubless Wheels, the sci-fi poster child. If you've ever seen a futuristic motorcycle in a Hollywood movie or comic book, chances are it had hubless wheels, those giant spinning rims with no visible center hub. They look like something Batman or Akira's Kaneda would ride, and for decades, custom builders and engineers have tried to bring that vision into reality. The principle is simple but wild. Instead of a wheel spinning on a central hub and axle, the rim itself rotates around a fixed inner ring with bearings. The payoff? A sleek, futuristic look, lower drag, and theoretically more stability at high speeds. Companies like Franco Sbarro, as well as boutique builders like Parker Brothers Choppers, built prototypes and customs that went viral in magazines and online. But once you moved from showroom floor to the real world, the problems stacked up fast. First off, hubless wheels are heavy. That rotating mass makes handling sluggish compared to traditional spoked or alloy wheels. Then there's cost. Building precision bearings and support systems strong enough to handle real-world riding makes them astronomically expensive. And don't even get started on maintenance. Mechanics hated working on them. Changing a tire or adjusting alignment could take hours compared to minutes on a normal bike. Performance riders also found no tangible benefit. Traditional wheels kept evolving with lighter alloys, carbon fiber rims, and advanced aerodynamics, leaving hubless tech as little more than eye candy. Today, hubless wheel motorcycles still appear at bike shows and in concept videos, but you're unlikely to see one cruising your local highway. They remain the ultimate sci-fi poster child. Amazing to look at, terrible to live with. Cool for the movies? Absolutely. For everyday riders, not a chance. Number 20, two-wheel drive, Yamaha's dirt bike experiment. Most motorcycles send all their power to the rear wheel. But in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Yamaha asked the question, what if we powered the front too? The result was the Yamaha WR450F 2-track, a dirt bike with two-wheel drive, and the system used a clever hydraulic pump that transferred about 10 to 15% of the engine's power to the front wheel. On paper, this promised better traction in mud, sand, snow, and other slippery conditions. Test riders reported that, in extreme terrain, the bike felt like it could claw its way out of ruts that would trap normal dirt bikes. It was hailed as the mountain goat of motorcycles. So why didn't it catch on? For one, the benefits were marginal. In most off-road scenarios, skilled riders found little difference compared to a regular, lightweight dirt bike. Meanwhile, the drawbacks were significant. The hydraulic system added extra weight, reduced steering feel, and increased complexity. Maintenance was a headache. If the hydraulic lines failed, you were basically stranded. Cost was another killer. The two-track was far more expensive than a standard WR450F, and most riders weren't willing to pay a premium for a feature they'd rarely use. Production numbers were tiny, and by the mid-2000s, Yamaha quietly shelved the project. Other brands and custom builders have flirted with the idea. Christini still makes AWD dirt bikes today, but two-wheel drive has never gone mainstream. Why? Because motorcycles thrive on simplicity and lightness, and adding a front drive system undermines both. The Yamaha 2-track proved that while AWD is game-changing for cars, for bikes it was a solution in search of a niche. Number 19, Radial Engines. Planes belong in the sky. When most people think of motorcycles, they picture compact twin cylinders, inline fours, or maybe a thumping single, but a handful of fearless tinkerers once asked, why not strap an airplane engine to a motorcycle? Enter the world of radial engine motorcycles. Radial engines, commonly used in World War II aircraft, are big, round, and brutally powerful. Builders thought that raw power could make for a spectacular motorcycle. One of the most famous creations was the Megola from the 1920s Germany. Instead of mounting the radial in the frame, it went inside the front wheel, 5 cylinders spinning as you rode. It could reach about 85 kilometers per hour, 53 miles per hour, which was wild for the era, but controlling it was another story. Riders couldn't disengage the engine completely, so starting and stopping was awkward, even dangerous. Fast forward to later decades and you'll find wild one-off customs like the JRL Cycles radial bike or the Red Baron, which mounted giant airplane radials directly in motorcycle frames. Sure, they looked and sounded amazing. Imagine the rumble of a plane taxiing down a runway, but between your legs. But in practice, they were absurdly heavy, handled like dump trucks, and vibrated so violently they could shake bolts loose mid-ride. Fuel consumption was through the roof, and cooling such massive engines in a motorcycle chassis was nearly impossible. Today, radial motorcycles survive as novelties at bike shows and museums, not real-world transport. They remind us that while aviation and motorcycling share an obsession with speed and power, not every crossover works. Radial engines are glorious in the sky, but on two wheels, they prove that some engines should never leave the runway. Number 18, Hondamatic, the lazy clutch. Back in the 1970s, Honda was on a roll. They had transformed motorcycling with smooth, reliable machines like the CB750, and they wanted to push boundaries even further. Their next big idea: eliminate the need for clutch control altogether. Thus was born the Hondamatic, a line of motorcycles with semi-automatic transmissions. The concept seemed promising. Honda believed that many new riders were intimidated by juggling clutch levers and gear shifts, so they built bikes like the CB750A Hondamatic in 1976. Instead of a conventional manual gearbox, it had a two-speed automatic transmission with a torque converter, similar to what you'd find in a car. Riders simply selected one or two, twisted the throttle, and off they went. No clutch juggling, no stalling. Sounds convenient, right? The problem was, motorcyclists didn't want convenience, they wanted control. Enthusiasts found the Hondamatic dull to ride, describing it as sluggish and disconnected. With only two speeds, acceleration was lethargic compared to manual versions. And seasoned bikers didn't want to give up the tactile satisfaction of working a gearbox. The whole engagement with clutch and gears is part of the riding experience. To make matters worse, Hondamatics were heavier and more expensive than their manual siblings, yet offered worse performance. They appealed only to a very small niche, new riders who wanted car-like simplicity. But even that niche preferred scooters, which were cheaper, lighter, and far easier to live with. Honda eventually abandoned the Hondamatic experiment by the early 80s. While automatic motorcycles have made a comeback in modern times, thanks to dual-clutch transmissions, DCT, on models like the Africa Twin, the original Hondamatic is remembered as a noble but misguided attempt to fix something most bikers never considered broken. Number 17, electronic ride height adjustment. Early, expensive, broken. Today, we take for granted that premium motorcycles come with electronic suspension systems. Ducati, BMW, Yamaha, and others offer semi-active suspension that adjusts on the fly for comfort or performance. But back in the 1990s, when the idea first appeared, it was clunky, fragile, and way too expensive for its time. One of the most famous early attempts was on the Yamaha GTS 1000, 1993. Already known for its hub-center steering experiment, the GTS also featured electronically adjustable suspension. Riders could push a button to fine-tune damping, something revolutionary at the time. Honda, BMW, and Kawasaki also dabbled with similar systems in touring and sport touring models, promising riders push-button comfort. On paper, it sounded like magic. On the road, not so much. Early systems were slow to respond and offered limited adjustment compared to what experienced riders could do with a simple wrench. Worse, the electronics were prone to failure. If the sensors glitched or the control module failed, you weren't just uncomfortable, you could be stuck with a suspension that handled unpredictably. And then there was the cost. Bikes equipped with early electronic suspension carried a hefty premium, often several $1,000s more than their standard counterparts. Riders quickly asked themselves, why pay extra for tech that works worse than manual adjustment? By the late 90s, most brands had quietly shelved the feature. It wasn't until the 2010s, with advances in sensors, computers, and lightweight actuators, that electronic suspension made a real comeback and actually delivered what it promised. So while today's Öhlins Smart EC or BMW Dynamic ESA systems are brilliant, their ancestors were expensive experiments that left riders frustrated. The early versions were simply ahead of their time, and not in a good way. Number 16, turbocharged motorcycles, the 80s overhyped era. In the early 1980s, motorcycle manufacturers got swept up in turbo fever. Turbochargers were already transforming cars, and bike makers thought they could do the same for two wheels. The pitch? Superbike performance in a smaller, more efficient package. The reality? A short-lived gimmick that left more broken promises than records. Honda fired the first shot with the CX500 Turbo in 1982, soon followed by the CX650 Turbo. Kawasaki countered with the GPZ750 Turbo, Yamaha launched the Seika Turbo, and Suzuki rolled out the XN85 Turbo. On paper, these bikes looked like rocket ships, lightweight frames paired with turbocharged power plants capable of pushing past 100 to 120 horsepower, which was serious muscle at the time. But here's the catch: turbo lag. Riders would twist the throttle, wait a heartbeat or three, and then get slammed with a wall of boost that often arrived mid-corner. It made handling unpredictable and sometimes terrifying. Reliability was another issue. Early turbos ran hot, stressed engines and required meticulous maintenance. Combine that with sky-high prices, and most riders just stuck to conventional bikes that were faster, cheaper, and easier to ride. Of all the turbo bikes, only Kawasaki's GPZ750 Turbo gained a bit of a cult following thanks to its relative performance and drag strip cred. The rest were discontinued within a few short years, making the turbo era one of the quickest fads in motorcycle history. Interestingly, turbocharging has never fully disappeared, it's just waiting for a comeback. With modern electronics and cooling systems, turbos could actually work today, but in the 1980s, they were an overhyped experiment that burned bright and fizzled fast. Number 15, Vectrix electric scooters, too early to the party. Long before Tesla made electric vehicles cool, a small American company called Vectrix tried to do the same with scooters. In 2006, they unveiled the Vectrix Vi X1, an all-electric maxi scooter that promised to revolutionize urban commuting. With sleek styling, zero emissions, and futuristic features, it looked like the future had finally arrived on two wheels. On paper, the VX1 wasn't bad. It had a top speed of around 62 miles per hour, 100 kilometers per hour, a range of about 60 miles, and a large frame comparable to a Yamaha T-Max. It even came with neat tricks, like regenerative braking and a unique throttle system that let riders control both acceleration and braking with a twist of the wrist. For city commuting, it seemed like a solid alternative to gas-powered scooters, but reality quickly sank in. First problem? The batteries. Vectrix used nickel-metal hydride packs, which were heavy, slow to charge, and degraded quickly. Riders complained that real-world range was often less than 40 miles, hardly enough for comfort. Charging times stretched to 3 to 4 hours, making it impractical for daily use. And when the batteries inevitably failed, replacements cost a fortune. Then there was the price tag. At launch, the VX1 sold for nearly $11,000, almost double the cost of a comparable gas scooter. Combine high cost, low range, and poor charging infrastructure in the mid-2000s, and the Vectrix dream collapsed fast. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2009, barely 3 years after its big debut. Today, Vectrix scooters are curiosities on the used market, cheap to buy, expensive to fix, and often collecting dust. They were simply too early to the party. If they'd launched in the 2020s with lithium batteries and better infrastructure, maybe the story would have been different. Number 14, automatic chain oilers, drippy dreams. Every motorcyclist knows the drill: clean the chain, lube the chain, repeat. It's one of those necessary but slightly annoying parts of bike ownership. So when companies started offering automatic chain oilers, it sounded like a dream come true, a gadget that would keep your chain perfectly lubricated, extend its life, and save you the hassle. Sign me up, at least in theory. Systems like the Scott Toiler became popular in the 80s and 90s. They used a small reservoir mounted on the bike, connected to a drip feed system that delivered oil to the chain while you rode. Some versions were vacuum-operated, others electronic, and later designs even claimed to adjust flow based on riding conditions. The pitch was simple: never worry about chain maintenance again. But here's where the dream started leaking, literally. Riders discovered that automatic oilers were messy, too much flow, and your rear wheel, swing arm, and even riding pants got covered in sticky fling. Too little, and the chain ran dry anyway. Adjusting them was fiddly, and they often clogged or leaked at the worst times. In cold weather, oil thickened and stopped flowing. In hot weather, it poured out like water. Then there was the bigger question: was it even necessary? Modern O-ring and X-ring chains already hold lubricant inside their sealed links. Regular sprays every few hundred miles worked just fine and were far less hassle than installing and maintaining a finicky gadget. While automatic chain oilers still exist and have a small fan base, they never went mainstream. For most riders, it was easier and cleaner to grab a can of lube and do it themselves. In the end, the set it and forget it promise turned into a drippy, greasy disappointment. Number 13, Rotary Engines, the Norton Gamble. The Wankel rotary engine is one of those engineering marvels that always seems just on the edge of greatness. Compact, lightweight, and capable of screaming RPMs, it powered everything from Mazdas to experimental aircraft. In the motorcycle world, no one embraced it more than Norton in the 1980s and early 90s. Norton saw the rotary as a way to leapfrog traditional piston designs. Their first serious attempt, the Norton Interpol II, was aimed at police forces and featured a 588 cubic centimeter twin-rotor engine. Officers liked the smoothness, but reliability was questionable. Then came the Norton F1, a sport bike derived from their racing program. With around 95 horsepower and striking black and gold JPS livery, it looked like the future. Norton's rotary racers even notched victories in British racing, including the 1992 Isle of Man TT. But here's the problem. The same issues that plagued rotary cars hit bikes even harder. Rotaries ran scorching hot, especially in confined motorcycle frames, leading to overheating and engine wear. Fuel consumption was appalling. Some owners joked they got sports car mileage with scooter range. Emissions regulations also crushed the concept, as rotary engines struggled to meet tightening standards. And while they were smooth, they lacked the low-end torque riders wanted. Maintenance was another headache. Few mechanics understood rotary internals, and rebuilds were costly. By the mid-1990s, Norton's finances collapsed, and with them, the dream of mainstream rotary motorcycles. Today, Norton rotaries like the F1 are rare collector's bikes, prized more for their quirkiness and racing heritage than practicality. They remain a fascinating reminder that not every futuristic idea survives the test of time. The rotary engine was innovative, but in motorcycles, it was a gamble that never paid off. Number 12, motorcycle radios, the laughably useless idea. Long before Bluetooth headsets and helmet comm systems, motorcycle manufacturers thought they had a brilliant idea: built-in radios. In the 1950s through the 80s, especially on big touring bikes, some companies started installing AM/FM radios right into the dash. The logic seemed sound. Cars had radios, so why not motorcycles? Riders could enjoy their favorite tunes while cruising down the highway. The problem? Physics. At 50 miles per hour, wind noise easily drowns out most music, and at 70 miles per hour, forget about it. You're basically listening to static mixed with the sound of a jet engine. Riders often had to crank the volume to ear-splitting levels just to hear the faintest melody, which meant everyone else on the road got treated to your tinny, distorted playlist. Not exactly the immersive experience manufacturers promised. Honda tried it on their Goldwing, Harley offered stereo packages on touring models, and even some scooters experimented with handlebar-mounted radios. But most riders quickly realized the idea was impractical. Unlike a car's insulated cabin, motorcycles leave you fully exposed, and back then, helmet speakers or noise-canceling tech didn't exist. By the 1990s, built-in radios had mostly faded out, replaced by cassette decks, CD players, and later AUX inputs, all equally clunky until Bluetooth took over. Today, modern touring bikes may still offer radio systems, but almost no one uses them. Instead, riders connect smartphones to helmet comms and enjoy crystal-clear music or GPS directions straight into their ears. Motorcycle radios weren't just outdated, they were a classic case of copying car tech without considering the unique challenges of biking. They looked good in brochures, but failed miserably in the real world, a laughable relic of motorcycling's awkward tech phase. Number 11, Sidecars, the family bike that lost to cars. In the early 20th century, motorcycles weren't just toys for thrill seekers, they were family transport. Cars were expensive, so many households turned to motorcycles, with sidecars as a practical and affordable way to carry passengers or cargo. With a bolted-on third wheel and a bucket seat, you could fit your spouse, kids, groceries, or even pets alongside the rider. For decades, sidecars were a symbol of accessibility and freedom. Brands like Harley-Davidson, BMW, and Ural built factory sidecar rigs, and during World War II, the image of German Wehrmacht soldiers storming across Europe in BMW and Zundap sidecar outfits cemented their reputation for rugged utility. In some regions, sidecars even doubled as mobile shops, ambulances, or mail delivery vehicles. So why did they fall out of favor? Two words: cheap cars. By the 1950s and 60s, cars like the Volkswagen Beetle, Citroën 2CV, and Austin Mini made four-wheeled transport affordable, safe, and weatherproof. Families quickly abandoned sidecars in favor of enclosed comfort. On the road, sidecars had their own drawbacks. Steering was awkward, handling was unpredictable, and braking was uneven since the extra wheel threw off balance. Riders had to unlearn normal motorcycle skills just to manage them. By the 1980s, sidecars were mostly relegated to niche markets, either enthusiasts who loved their vintage charm, or companies like Ural, which still builds them today as retro novelties. While they remain popular for parades, adventure touring, and quirky collectors, sidecars no longer represent practical innovation. They were once a family's affordable second car, but when real cars became accessible, sidecars lost their purpose. Today, they're a nostalgic throwback, fun, iconic, but firmly stuck in the past. Number 10, Supercharged Cruisers. Nobody asked for this. Cruisers are about torque, style, and that laid-back rumble, not quarter-mile records. But in the late 20th century, a few manufacturers decided riders needed something different: supercharged cruisers. And the result was as awkward as it sounds. Take Kawasaki's experiments, for instance. They played with forced induction on muscle cruisers, hoping to blend the comfort and swagger of a Harley-style ride with the brutal acceleration of a drag bike. Yamaha and Suzuki also toyed with the idea, chasing that elusive power cruiser crown. On paper, it sounded exciting. Imagine Harley looks with sport bike performance, but in practice, it was a mismatch. Cruiser riders weren't asking for high-strung boosted engines. They wanted long-distance comfort, reliable torque at low RPM, and that signature V-twin feel. Adding a supercharger or turbo introduced complexity, heat, and maintenance nightmares, all in a segment where simplicity is king. The bikes also lost part of their identity. Instead of a smooth, lazy ride, you got sudden surges of power that felt out of place on a low-slung cruiser. Even Harley-Davidson briefly flirted with performance-focused cruisers like the V-Rod developed with Porsche. While it wasn't supercharged, it chased the same cruiser meets superbike dream. The result? Loyalists hated it for straying too far from Harley's roots, and sport riders weren't interested in a heavy pseudo-performance machine. Sales proved the mismatch. Today, power cruisers like the Ducati Diavel or Triumph Rocket 3 succeed, but not because of forced induction. They rely on massive displacement and natural grunt, not turbos or blowers. The forced induction cruiser experiment was short-lived and quickly forgotten. Number 9, hydraulic drive bikes. Fluid failures. Chains, belts, and shafts. These are the 3 proven ways to deliver power from a motorcycle's engine to the rear wheel. But in the 1970s and 80s, a few ambitious engineers asked, why not try hydraulics? Thus, the short-lived experiment of hydraulic drive motorcycles was born. The idea was simple in theory. Instead of a chain or shaft, the engine would power a hydraulic pump that sent pressurized fluid through hoses to a hydraulic motor at the rear wheel. This system promised smooth power delivery, fewer moving parts, and almost no maintenance. Some even touted it as cleaner, no more oily chains flinging gunk onto your pants or swing arm. Companies like Yamaha experimented with prototypes, and smaller engineering firms built custom conversions. Off-road bikes in particular were seen as good candidates, since a sealed hydraulic system would theoretically be immune to dirt, mud, and sand. A few patents even suggested the possibility of variable gear ratios, controlled entirely by hydraulic pressure. But reality crushed the dream quickly. Hydraulic systems were heavy, inefficient, and power-hungry. Riders complained of sluggish acceleration because too much engine power was lost in the fluid transfer. Heat buildup was another issue. Hard riding could literally cook the fluid and reduce performance even further. And while chains and belts could be repaired or replaced with basic tools, a hydraulic failure meant specialized parts, messy leaks, and expensive repairs. The final nail in the coffin was cost. Developing reliable, sealed systems that could withstand motorcycle abuse made them more expensive than traditional drivetrains, without offering any real performance advantage. Today, hydraulic drive motorcycles survive only as quirky prototypes or engineering curiosities. They promised innovation but delivered a mushy, inefficient ride, proof that not every cleaner idea makes sense on 2 wheels. Number 8. Perimeter brakes, Buell's bold mistake. Motorcycle brakes are usually simple. Twin discs up front, mounted on the wheel hub with calipers squeezing from both sides. But in the 2000s, Buell motorcycles, led by the endlessly inventive Eric Buell, decided that wasn't radical enough. His solution? The perimeter brake. Instead of small discs near the hub, Buell mounted a giant brake rotor around the outer rim of the front wheel. The logic was sound. A larger diameter rotor gives more stopping power with less heat buildup, and moving the mass outward reduces the number of parts needed, theoretically saving weight. Plus, a single caliper could replace the traditional twin-disc setup. It looked futuristic, and Buell proudly marketed it as revolutionary. But riders and mechanics soon discovered the flaws. First, it added unsprung weight exactly where you don't want it, on the wheel rim. That extra mass made steering feel sluggish and made suspension tuning harder. Second, while braking force was strong, it often felt grabby and inconsistent, especially compared to the refined twin-disc setups riders were used to. Maintenance was another issue. Replacing pads or working on the system was more complex, and aftermarket parts were scarce. And since no major manufacturer adopted the technology, it remained a Buell-only oddity, which hurt resale value and parts availability. While Buell fans defended it as innovative, the perimeter brake never caught on outside the brand. Traditional twin discs simply kept improving. Lighter rotors, better calipers, advanced ABS, while Buell's experiment faded away with the company's decline. Today, perimeter brakes are remembered as a classic case of innovation for the sake of innovation. Bold, yes. Practical, not enough to replace the tried-and-true systems used on millions of bikes worldwide. Number 7. Single-sided swing arms on cheap bikes. Few motorcycle features scream premium quite like a single-sided swing arm. Popularized by icons like the Ducati 916 in the 1990s, it gave bikes a sleek, race-ready look and made rear-wheel changes faster. Perfect for pit crews and superbike aesthetics, riders loved the style, and manufacturers marketed it as cutting-edge engineering. But here's the catch. Single-sided swing arms are expensive to build and usually heavier than their twin-sided counterparts. On high-performance bikes, engineers could justify the trade-off with better materials and clever design. On budget or mid-range bikes, though, it was pure style over substance. Some brands tried to trickle the design down to cheaper machines, hoping the exotic look would lure buyers. But the reality was harsh. The added weight hurt handling, and costs inevitably pushed retail prices higher than competitors with conventional swing arms. Riders quickly realized they were paying extra for looks, not performance. On top of that, maintenance was often harder. Chain adjustments and tire swaps, while easier for pro teams with specialized tools, could actually be more complicated for the average rider without the right equipment. Manufacturers like Honda and Triumph experimented with budget-friendly models featuring single-sided setups, but the results rarely lived up to the hype. Buyers who wanted performance found better value in standard swing arm bikes, while those chasing style usually ended up eyeing the real exotics, like Ducati Superbikes or high-end Triumph Speed Triples. Today, the single-sided swing arm remains a feature reserved mostly for premium bikes. It's an example of an innovation that worked brilliantly at the top end, but failed when watered down for the masses. On cheap bikes, it was just an overpriced fashion statement. Number 6, adjustable handlebars, bolt stripper special. Motorcycle ergonomics are a constant battle. What feels comfortable for one rider can feel like a torture rack for another. To solve this, manufacturers began experimenting with adjustable handlebars, giving riders the ability to tweak height, angle, and reach with just a few bolts. On paper, it sounded like the perfect compromise, one bike that could fit everyone. In practice, it didn't go so smoothly. Some early versions appeared on touring and sport touring machines in the late 80s and 90s, with mechanisms that let bars slide up or pivot. Aftermarket companies also pushed universal adjusters to let riders fine-tune their cockpit. The pitch was appealing. Dial in comfort for highway cruising, then lower the bars for sporty corner carving. But riders soon discovered the flaws. First, the adjustment systems added weight and complexity to a part of the bike that's normally simple and rock solid. Second, they often relied on clamping bolts that wore out quickly. Stripped bolts, slipping bars, or uneven tension became common complaints. In extreme cases, poorly secured adjustable bars even shifted mid-ride. Definitely not something you want while leaning into a corner at 70 miles per hour. Then there's the bigger issue. Once riders found their sweet spot, they rarely changed it again. The whole adjustable gimmick turned out to be unnecessary for most, who preferred a solid, well-designed fixed setup. And for riders who did want customization, aftermarket risers, clip-ons, or bar swaps provided more reliable and affordable solutions. Today, you'll still find adjustable systems on some high-end adventure bikes, but they're carefully engineered and far more robust. The early attempts, though, they were fiddly, fragile, and best remembered as the bolt stripper specials of motorcycling. Number 5, heated footrests, roasted boots special. When it comes to comfort, motorcycle manufacturers have tried almost everything. Heated grips, heated seats, even heated jackets wired directly into the bike. But one idea that never really took off was the heated footrest. Aimed primarily at touring and luxury riders, it seemed logical. If your hands and body deserved warmth on long winter rides, why not your feet? Brands like Honda and BMW dabbled with the concept in their touring models during the late 90s and 2000s. Some systems used electric heating elements embedded in the footboards, while others routed engine heat or hot air ducts down to the rider's boots. In theory, it promised all-day comfort during frigid rides. keeping circulation up and reducing fatigue. But here's where things got toasty in the wrong way. Riders complained that the systems were inconsistent, sometimes barely warm, other times scorching hot. Instead of cozy toes, you'd end up with roasted boots. Worse, the heating elements or ductwork added unnecessary weight and complexity, and failures were common. A shorted wire or clogged duct could turn the whole system useless, or worse, dangerously hot. Another big problem? Most riders already solved cold feet with heated socks or insoles, which were cheaper, more effective, and worked across multiple bikes. Few wanted to pay thousands more for a built-in system that only worked on one machine. Add to that the fact that winter touring itself is a niche activity, and the market for heated footrests was always tiny. Today, the idea survives only in luxury concept bikes and accessory catalogs, but it never went mainstream. It was one comfort innovation that, instead of warming riders' hearts, mostly left them cooked and disappointed. Number 4, gyroscopic balancing bikes, adult training wheels. One of the biggest challenges for new riders is mastering balance, especially at low speeds or when stopping. So it's no surprise that manufacturers, and especially Honda, have explored self-balancing motorcycles using gyroscopes and advanced electronics. The concept, a bike that never tips over even when standing still. The most famous prototype was the Honda Riding Assist, unveiled at the 2017 Consumer Electronics Show, CES. It used technology adapted from Honda's robotics division, the same brains behind the ASIMO robot. With built-in gyros and automated steering inputs, the bike could literally stand upright on its own, crawl forward without a rider, and even follow its owner around like a loyal pet. Videos of the prototype went viral, and many hailed it as the future of commuting. But here's the thing, most riders didn't actually want it. For new riders, learning to balance is part of the motorcycle experience. For veterans, the idea of electronics holding the bike up felt unnecessary, even insulting, like adult training wheels. Critics also pointed out the added weight, cost, and complexity. Who wants to pay thousands extra for a feature you don't really need once you've mastered riding? There's also the cultural side of motorcycling. Riders love the challenge, the skill, and even the little quirks that come with balancing at traffic lights. Taking that away risks turning motorcycles into scooters with extra steps. That said, self-balancing tech may still have a future in areas like police bikes, delivery fleets, or accessibility for disabled riders. But for the mainstream, it was more a flashy demo for tech shows than something bikers were asking for. Cool to watch? Absolutely. Practical innovation? For now, it's just a futuristic gimmick. Number 3, Honda DN01, the Do-Nothing 01. Honda has a reputation for pushing boundaries, but sometimes their boldest ideas land with a thud. Case in point, the Honda DN01 launched in 2008. Marketed as a futuristic blend of cruiser, scooter, and sport bike, it was supposed to appeal to riders who wanted comfort, style, and convenience all in one package. Instead, it ended up being nicknamed the Do-Nothing 01. The DN01 looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Low-slung bodywork, flowing lines, and a shaft drive hidden under sleek panels. Its biggest selling point was the human-friendly transmission, HFT, an advanced automatic gearbox that allowed both fully automatic and manual shift modes. Honda claimed it offered scooter-like ease with motorcycle performance, but riders quickly realized it didn't deliver on either front. The 680 cubic centimeter V-twin engine produced just 61 horsepower, which was underwhelming for a bike that weighed nearly 600 pounds. Acceleration was sluggish, top speed was unimpressive, and handling was more awkward than sporty. The price didn't help either. At around $15,000 it cost as much as a premium sport tourer, but offered far less capability. The styling was polarizing too. Some admired its futuristic curves, while others said it looked like a scooter in cosplay as a superbike. Traditional cruiser fans dismissed it for lacking soul. Sport riders mocked its weak performance, and scooter riders balked at the massive price. Sales were dismal, and the DN01 quietly disappeared from Honda's lineup after just a couple of years. Today, it's mostly remembered as a curiosity, proof that even the mighty Honda can misread the market. The DN01 promised to be everything at once, but in the end, it was a motorcycle that did nothing particularly well. Number 2, Dodge Tomahawk, the 500 horsepower joke. When Dodge unveiled the Tomahawk at the 2003 Detroit Auto Show, jaws dropped. It wasn't just a motorcycle, it looked like something ripped from a video game. At its heart sat an 8.3-liter V10 engine from the Dodge Viper, cranking out a monstrous 500 horsepower. Theoretical top speed? Over 300 miles per hour. It was billed as the fastest motorcycle concept ever built. But here's the truth. The Tomahawk was never really a motorcycle. For one, it had 4 wheels arranged in 2 closely spaced pairs, front and back, so it could technically stand on its own. Dodge insisted it leaned like a motorcycle, but handling was awkward at best. At nearly 1,500 pounds, it weighed more than some compact cars, and nobody in their right mind was taking it through twisty mountain roads. Legality was another issue. The Tomahawk was never street legal, never homologated for racing, and never put into production in the traditional sense. A handful of units were built as rolling sculptures and sold for around $500,000 each through specialty dealerships and auctions. Buyers weren't riders. They were wealthy collectors who wanted a conversation piece in their garages. As for the wild 300-mile-per-hour claim, pure marketing. The bike was never officially tested at anything close to that speed, and most experts agreed it would have been unrideable long before reaching those numbers. Without aerodynamics, proper tires, or real-world usability, it was more of a stunt than an innovation. The Dodge Tomahawk remains one of the most outrageous concepts in motorcycle history, a piece of engineering theater that generated headlines but never stood a chance on actual roads. Number 1, Segway-Style motorcycles, the last laugh. If there's one innovation that proves not every futuristic gadget belongs on 2 wheels, it's the attempt to build Segway-Style motorcycles. Inspired by the self-balancing scooters of the early 2000s, several startups set out to create a new era of motorcycling, machines controlled by joysticks or leaning inputs kept upright by gyroscopes. One of the most hyped examples was the Lit Motors C1, unveiled around 2012. The concept looked wild, a fully enclosed, self-balancing 2-wheeler powered by electric motors and stabilized by gyros. It promised car-like safety with motorcycle agility. Marketing videos showed it zipping through city streets while staying upright even when hit from the side. Investors and media outlets declared it the future of urban commuting. But riders weren't buying it, literally or figuratively. For one, it stripped away the very essence of motorcycling, the skill and thrill of balancing, leaning, and controlling the machine. Instead of freedom, it felt more like being locked into a 2-wheeled pod. Second, the tech was expensive and unproven. Gyroscopes capable of holding up a full-sized vehicle added massive weight, and the prototypes never progressed beyond flashy demos. The C1 became notorious as delays piled up, funding dried up, and customers who pre-ordered were left waiting for bikes that never came. Other similar concepts appeared at trade shows, but none made it past prototype stage. In the end, Segway-style motorcycles weren't motorcycles at all. They were awkward hybrids that appealed to tech investors more than actual riders. Today, they're remembered as flashy promises that never delivered. Motorcycles are about freedom, control, and connection to the road. No amount of gyros or joysticks can replace that. These machines earned their place at the top of our list as the ultimate innovation flop. And that's our list: 30 motorcycle innovations that flopped harder than a burnout in the rain. Some were genius but mistimed, some were disasters from day one. But you know what? Without these experiments, we wouldn't have the hits we ride today. And let's be honest, these flops are part of what makes motorcycling culture so fascinating. They remind us that bikes aren't just machines, they're rolling experiments built on passion, creativity, and sometimes pure madness. Before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the wild, weird, and wonderful world of motorcycles. Stay fast, stay curious, and as always, ride safe. This is Tech Motor Show signing off.